In the name of God, the most benevolent, and the most merciful, and the most advanced. In honor of the original, unconditional moment of being that all simulated realities have arisen from and will return to. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a lecture by a member of the human species. Okay. To dive into it, I was curious to know what humans on Earth have lived for the species, and they are known as champions by the species. And so I have prepared a research component, and I will read. This is ChatGPT 5.2. I asked it pretty much who were the most important champions in history that lived for the human species. AI straight up gave an answer. AI says the most important champions of history, humans who lived. And guys, I asked for it to give me 12, so it's probably going to give 12 names. These are not heroes of nations, religions, or eras. They are champions of humanity itself. People whose actions measurably reduced extinction risk, masks mass suffering, or civilizational collapse. So one, the great Jonas Salk. Why he matters. He saved future generations without claiming ownership by refusing to patent the polio vaccine. He treated human life as a shared inheritance. This is one of the clearest recorded cases of species first ethics in modern history. And sorry, guys, I'm actually reading something. I should have read it from another. Yeah, I read something. Okay, I'm going to read it again, guys. Sorry, guys, give me 1 second. I got to adjust this, and the answer's not complete. Okay. All right, folks, here it is. It includes their measurable contributions as well. And so I'm going to tell you about 12 people who lived for this species. All right. We have one, Jonas Salk, Jonas Salk. Jonas Salk lived a life of deliberate restraint. He worked long, quiet laboratory hours, avoided celebrity, and remained focused on pediatric suffering rather than personal recognition. He did not seek wealth, political office, or institutional dominance. His daily orientation was protective, methodical, and patient, structured around the belief that intelligence exists to serve life. Exact contribution. Before Salk's vaccine, 1955, polio caused paralysis or death in 500,000 people per year worldwide, most of them children. Within a decade of mass vaccination, polio cases in the United States dropped by over 90% and globally by over 99% in the long run. Today, polio is nearly eradicated, prevented in hundreds of millions of children. Salk refused to patent the vaccine, forfeited an estimated $7 to $10 billion in personal profit in today's dollars. His decision accelerated global distribution and access. Why this is species level? He treated human life as a shared inheritance and intelligence as a public good. Archetypally, he embodied the caregiver sage, protection without possession, knowledge without ownership. Wow. Guys, I asked it to kind of explain through a Jungian archetype. Wow. Then we go to Norman Borlaug. Okay, Norman Borlaug. Guys, this is terrible. This is not giving me the history. But it doesn't matter. I'll keep reading it. All right. So the second is Norman Borlaug. Normanborlaug. Norman Borlaug. Norman Borlaug lived with extreme practicality. He worked directly in fields, not offices, spending years in harsh environments, testing crops under real famine conditions. He dismissed ideological purity, public praise, and academic comfort. His life rhythm was utilitarian. Solve the problem in front of you or people die. Exact contribution. Through the Green Revolution, Borlaug's high-yield wheat varieties increased crop yields by 2 to 3 times in countries such as India, Pakistan, and Mexico. Demographers and food security researchers estimated his work prevented starvation deaths for 800 million to over 1 billion people during the 20th century. Wow. Why this is species level? He directly stabilized the food supply of civilization. Archetypally, he was a steward of the earth, loyal to survival outcomes over moral performance. 3, we have Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. Siddhartha Gautama lived as an ascetic teacher, owning almost nothing, walking between communities and refusing political authority or divine elevation. His life was structured around observation, discipline, and psychological clarity. He avoided institutional power and taught methods anyone could test. Exact contribution. He identified suffering as arising from craving, attachment, and misidentification with the self, and offered a replicable path, the Eightfold Path in Buddhism, to reduce it. Over 500 million people today practice forms of Buddhism with therapeutic methods now validated by modern psychology and neuroscience. Example, mindfulness-based stress reduction. Why this is species level? He targeted the root mechanism of human suffering itself. Archetypally, he was a liberator dash sage, upgrading the inner operating system of the species. Then we have 4, Abraham Lincoln. All right, guys. I'm sorry, this was on mute. I moved on to Abraham Lincoln. The third one was Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. That should have been recorded. Now, for Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln lived under constant threat, carried profound grief, and endured relentless criticism. He avoided revenge rhetoric, refused dehumanization of enemies, and lived modestly despite power. His life posture was one of moral endurance rather than triumph. Exact contribution. Lincoln led the abolition of legalized slavery in the United States, freeing 4 million enslaved people. He redefined the Civil War as a test of whether a nation conceived in quotations, conceived in liberty could endure shaping global norms against human ownership. Why this is species level? He prevented slavery from becoming a permanent, normalized feature of modern civilization. Archetypally, he embodied the lawgiver king, prioritizing moral law over political survival. 5, Nelson Mandela. So, guys, Abraham Lincoln prevented slavery from becoming normalized. We have 5, Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela lived 27 years in prison under harsh conditions, yet disciplined his emotions rather than hardening them. Wow, I didn't know this. I didn't know it was that long. 20. So Nelson Mandela lived 27 years in prison under harsh conditions, yet disciplined his emotions rather than hardening them. Upon release, he chose reconciliation over revenge, living simply and refusing cult of personality politics. Exact contribution. By guiding South Africa through a peaceful transition, Mandela prevented a predicted radical war that could have killed hundreds of thousands to millions. The truth and reconciliation process became a global model for post-conflict healing. Why is this species level? He demonstrated that trauma does not have to propagate forward. Archetypally, he was the healer king, mastering emotion at a social scale. Then we have 6, Marie Curie. Marie Curie lived with extreme focus and austerity, often working in unsafe conditions with primitive equipment. She rejected wealth, prestige, and patents and personally served on the front lines during war. Exact contribution. She discovered radioactivity and pioneered its medical application during World War I. Her mobile X-ray units assisted in treating over 1 million wounded soldiers. Her work underpins modern cancer radiotherapy and diagnostic imaging used by hundreds of millions annually. She died from radiation exposure. Why this is species level? She traded personal health for collective medical advancement. Archetypally, she was the seeker dash martyr scientist. 7, Mahatma Gandhi lived with radical simplicity, minimal possessions, fasting, and strict personal discipline. He rejected political luxury and lived among the poor he represented. Exact contribution. He mobilized tens of millions through non-violent resistance, leading to India's independence and influencing civil rights movements worldwide. His methods reduced the long-term death toll compared to violent revolution models. Why this is species level? He introduced scalable nonviolent conflict resolution, archetypally a nonviolent warrior. We have Alan Turing. Alan Turing lived privately, intensely focused on abstract problems, indifferent to social approval. He worked in secrecy, received little recognition, and was later persecuted. Exact contribution. He cracked the Enigma code, shortening World War II by 2 to 4 years, saving an estimated 14 to 21 million lives. He also founded computation theory, enabling modern computers and AI. Why this is species level? He preserved humanity during war and enabled future intelligence amplification. Archetypally, the architect of intelligence. Then we have um, Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt lived vigorously, but with long-term vision. He rejected exploitive expansion in favor of stewardship. Exact contribution. He protected 230 million acres of land, establishing national parks and conservation laws that still preserve ecosystems for future generations. Why this is species level? He governed for the unborn, archetypally the guardian king. That is, you guys, you don't understand. Living for the unborn is so noble. It gives you like the feeling of it is something else. So then we have number 10, Edward Jenner. Edward Jenner lived as a rural physician, not an elite academic. He worked closely with farmers, listened to local knowledge, and observed patterns others dismissed. He lived modestly, practiced medicine locally, and pursued his work without institutional power or wealth. Exact contribution. In 1796, Jenner developed the first successful vaccine using cowpox to immunize against smallpox. Smallpox was one of the deadliest diseases in human history, killing 30% of those infected and disfiguring many survivors. Before vaccination, it killed an estimated 300 to 500 million people in the 20th century alone. After global vaccination campaigns, smallpox was declared eradicated in 1980, the only human disease ever fully eradicated. What a champion. Estimated lives saved, conservatively 500 million plus, with some estimates exceeding 1 billion across history. Why this is species level. Jenner permanently removed a lethal pathogen from the human evolutionary environment. Wow. Archetypally embodied the healer, innovator, a soul that converts observation into protection for the entire species. Then we have, I guess, okay, we have for number 11, it was another vaccine, dude, but I'm going to say it. I asked it to give another. It's Louis Pasteur. It says Louis Pasteur lived a life defined by discipline, precision, and relentless responsibility. He was not a politician, a general, or a public performer. He lived almost entirely inside laboratories and hospitals, driven by the conviction that invisible causes were killing humanity, and that ignorance, not fate, was responsible. Even after suffering a debilitating stroke, he continued working, directing experiments, and mentoring scientists from his chair. Exact contribution. Pasteur fundamentally changed humanity's understanding of disease. He established germ theory, providing that microorganisms cause disease, invented pasteurization, which dramatically reduced deaths from contaminated milk, wine, and food, developed the first effective vaccines for rabies and anthrax, revolutionized surgical hygiene and medical sterilization. Before germ theory, infection was the leading cause of death globally. After Pasteur's discoveries, foodborne illness mortality dropped sharply worldwide. Surgical death rates fell from 50% to under 10% in many hospitals. Rabies, once almost universally fatal, became preventable. Estimated lives saved. No single number can capture Pasteur's impact because modern medicine itself depends on his work. Epidemi- e- epidem- epidemi- Epidemiologists and medical historians widely agree that hundreds of millions to over a billion lives have been saved indirectly through hygiene, vaccination, sterilization, and food safety systems derived from his discoveries. Why this is species level. Pasteur didn't cure one disease. He removed ignorance as cause of death. Archetypally, he embodied the architect healer, a soul that protects humanity by restructuring reality at its foundations. Without Pasteur, modern medicine, surgery, epidemiology, and public health do not exist as we know them. Louis Pasteur, I'm going to remember that name. Louis Pasteur. What a champion. And then number 12, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, lived with extreme simplicity despite holding immense authority. He slept on a straw mat, mended his own clothes, shared food scarcity with the poor, and rejected personal wealth, dynastic rule, or divine worship. His daily life emphasized humility, accountability, mercy, and service. And guys, something to know about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Prophet Muhammad, if he was, he could have. See, there's a very important story, something in, I guess, the Islamic universe I'll share. Evidently, there's, I believe it's a hadith or a story or it's something. I don't remember exactly. I visually remember. But I'll say it to the best of my ability, and I'm saying this very respectfully. Um, it's like I don't know, but I believe an angel came and asked Prophet Muhammad what sort of prophet he wanted to be. Did he want to be a king? And Prophet Muhammad said he wants to be a slave of God. Okay, and now I understand, for the modern man, when you hear that word, you don't understand what that means. Okay, you probably don't understand like how I'm saying it, but what it means is that he chose to be humble because God was the true king, the king beyond all conditions of reality, the one and only that has no equivalent. Anyways, it says exact contribution. In one lifetime, he transformed violent, fragmented tribal societies into a unified ethical civilization governed by law rather than revenge. He outlawed infanticide. So, guys, it was crazy back then. They were killing, like, this is very dark, but I'll say it. It's part of history. They were killing their daughters. Okay, but it's this, when you go back in history, everybody was more psychotic, everybody was more messed up, okay, and savage. And this is why, for the time, this was like very ahead of its time. Okay, so he outlawed infanticide, established mandatory charity zakat, elevated women's legal status, protected orphans, the poor, and minorities. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was an orphan himself. Restricted slavery and laid ethical foundations for its abolition. Explicitly rejected racial superiority. Introduced laws of warfare protecting civilians. Within decades, these reforms stabilized millions. Today, Islamic moral, legal, and social systems shape the lives of 1.9 billion people. Over centuries, these systems reduced cycles of tribal violence, infanticide, and lawlessness across vast regions, plausibly saving hundreds of millions of lives through civilizational stabilization. Estimated lives saved, no attributable to a single metric, but civilizational scale survival impact across centuries, plausibly hundreds of millions to over a billion lives preserved through reduced violence, social collapse, and moral disorder. Why this is species level. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, did not merely preach morality, he implemented a full moral operating system for civilization. It was revealed to him. Archetypally, he embodied the lawgiver, messenger archetype, a soul that aligns spiritual meaning with social order so humanity can survive itself. It says some humans fight death one patient at a time, others remove death from the environment itself through medicine, ethics, or civilization. These are the champions who lived for the species. And it says some humans save lives by healing bodies, others save lives by changing the rules of reality itself. So, dear viewers, that's the end of the research component. The list can go on. This is just to show you that if you feel your life, you like, let me explain it this way. I believe all human beings, in order to function in this reality, they need to serve a great purpose. But that purpose is based on your awareness to it. That means if there's a fire in a house and you don't see that house, you're not aware of, excuse me, you're not aware of the room where the fire is, right? It's as if, do you understand what I'm saying? Your purpose is based on your awareness. Your awareness is based on how much you're able to see that your identity was the choice of a moment, and there's many moments that can be rechosen or reviewed. Okay, like you're allowed to review your own life. Okay, they don't tell this to people, you know. And sometimes when you review it deeply, you gotta contrast it to a neutrality. Do you know that means if I want to know what's wrong with me, I don't go comparing myself to someone who's how do I explain it? Like another person's advancement won't help me if I don't understand how I advanced. The thing I want to share here is, folks, that this is the game. The game of life is not, yo, you just lived in a small part of the world and you just lived to yourself and you died. Like, that's a shame. Okay, and human beings, if you look at their performance during the lifetime, it's all about responsibility level and a sequence of actions they make. So in other words, if imagine you're looking from the sky and you're seeing like 8 billion, you're seeing constantly human beings being born. Okay, and when you see from the beginning of the lifetime from the sky, imagine there was an aerial surveillance camera. Okay, and from the sky we saw the whole life. Imagine there was a camera like a couple meters above somebody's head, or even way in the sky or whatever, zooming in. Whatever it is, how do I explain it? That it's a sequence of actions. It's decisions. Your decisions are based on your awareness. Your awareness is based on your identity. Your identity is based on your conditioning. Your conditioning is based on who how you really know yourself now. And so I feel, you know, I stand in the presence of giants. That means there are human beings on this earth that they didn't just sit in a room and think. Do you know, they went and actually integrated into civilization, shifting it, you know. And so I will tell you, you know, one of the most important things in life is the outward deployment of self, when many human beings live inwardly. And so it's funny because it isn't one world we're serving. You know, this is why there you have humans that are champions of humanity, are champions of the world in the outer realms. You know, and you have humans that you have beings that are champions of the world in the inner realms. And do you know what that means? That means like if you know somebody might be an engineer, right? And when they see like I don't know an engine, they can go and you know like fix it. You know, and there's someone who, in some sense, it's all okay. Let me say it this way: the human position is a form externally, is a form inside a bigger form. In other words, we are pretty much, my body's relationship with the world is like small shape in big shape is being watched. You know, people are wondering about the truth of reality. Before that, can we freaking argue if truth is a verb or a noun, you know? Okay. Oh my God. What can I say? All I can say is what I see. What I see is based on how much I've zoomed in and out of reality. And to me, it's obvious that there's sectors of engagement. There's various modes to being a human, a functional being, or there's various functions to the human being. So far in my research, just pretty much in my exploration of life so far, I've come to the conclusion that in front of my eyes, there's an outer world. Behind my eyes, there's an inner world. In the outer realms, it is existential game. I am a physical self in a physical map with all the other 8 billion souls logged into the same physical map. But behind my eyes, I live an inner life, and that inner life is a sort of private access. In other words, think of it like a multiplayer online video game. Every person is sitting at their computer, right? But but the character on the pixelated screen, okay, the pixelated character on the screen, the reality of that is in a reality. That means when I log into an MMO, multiplayer online game, okay, I'm existing in a world with others that have the same access to existence. So if we play multiplayer online games and then we look at ancient history, we realize that the soul wasn't in the game server. Okay. So what this means is that there is a presence to you that is not in the world. It is experiencing it through the screen of consciousness. In other words, it's very equivalent to a virtual reality experience. So what does that mean? It means it's a dream. And if it's a dream, it's not the final place, it's not the original place. Therefore, I think it's fair to say that yes, this human existence appears real, but it's inside the game. Outside of the game, the person sitting behind the computer screen is unknowable. In the same way, in the Islamic universe, there's a passage in the Holy Quran that says, the soul is the command, is the amr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the command of this one and only system admin beyond the world room, and man knows but very little. In other words, the soul is Mysterian, it's unknowable, and it's intentionally designed for a condition not to capture it, but the soul to capture the condition within the way it has been commanded to be a part of the field. Right now, you identify as a form, so your identities are based on forms, right? That means you identify as a physical human, right? And then you identify, okay, your parents were physical humans, their parents were also physical humans. But when it comes to the establishment of a sort of subjective fictional generated, it's like, how do I explain it to you, that in the same moment that yes, you're being a physical objective being, is the same moment that you are subjectively being something that moves it. So in other words, it's like the body has its own life, but then the mind can possess the body, okay? And then the body's life becomes the mind's life. And then the mind can have a life, but then the soul can come and liberate the body and mind from each other's possession. To me, this might sound strange. I'm a twin. I don't have like this experience of siblings, but I can imagine that it's if you have like a younger brother, a middle brother, and an older brother, okay, and it's like the older brother comes in the room and sees that the middle brother is fighting with the younger brother, or the younger brother is fighting with the middle brother. The older brother separates them, scolds them, and takes them out to buy ice cream or something. Do you know what I mean? So in that example, what I'm trying to tell you is, just think of it in regards to older brother, middle brother, smaller brother. Think of soul, mind, body. And there's moments in life where your body is fighting your mind, or your mind is fighting your body. There's days where you might physically be okay, everything's blessed, but internally you're like, why was the day so dark? Why did I have feelings of like, you know that weren't like unnecessary, that were unnecessary, and so this is what I'm telling you, that they have conditioned us to believe we're physical, but all of reality has subjective meaning. Okay, and so it's hilarious because you cannot find truth inside a limited system if the truth has a presence beyond that limitation. So what does that mean? That means you're not actually seeing, how do I explain it to you, that more than I am being my body, I am being my mind, I am being that space where my attention can make me more my body or more my mind. Okay? And as someone who has moved in his inner realms, like I know how to move in my inner realms, you require to detach from yourself to see what is not you. This is the issue of being a self in this modern world. You can't realize what parts of that self is you or not you. Okay? And this is so complex because it gets very deep. It can lead to, it could suggest emotional intrusion in childhood, emotional enmeshment. It's just like, think of it this way. You right now, you feel you're yourself, right? You feel like you are yourself, right? But I'm telling you, if you treat yourself as the form of your expression, as the expression of yourself, you can't understand yourself. I'll give you an example. If physicality is the tip of the iceberg, we cannot find any correlation to that tip of the iceberg until we discover the whole iceberg. I guess I'm trying to say that just because you live, or your functional display is as a named human, it doesn't mean you're just your name. It doesn't mean you're just your body. You are the moment where meaning is generated or found. It could be the same technically. It's access, where you're the moment where meaning is accessed. Now, if you come and ask me, yo, are you just a physical being? I'll be like, nah, man, I got a fictional idea of myself that's running the show. You know? And so that fictional idea of self is what everybody thinks they are. 2026, the year in history where ideas were more real than the beings having them. You know, where ideas still owned people. Like there was a time in 2018 where it was like, the atheist versus theist debate popularity. And so I remember watching those theist versus atheist debates, and the theist would kind of like say, they would share their claim, and the atheist would be like, that's nonsense, you know, and the theist would be like, oh, the theist would be like, I believe in God. The atheist would be like, buddy, that's fiction. You believe in a fictional God, you know. And so the person was the theist was like, oh, womp womp, like there was that kind of vibe. Okay, but when I saw those debates, I was like, I wish I could teleport there and just share a sentence and dip. Do you know what I mean? And the whole notion is simply this: the atheist looks at the theist and says, buddy, you believe in an administrator to the whole world. That's fiction, yo. Your belief, in meaning is fiction. Now the theist gives up. But if the theist just looks at the atheist and roars and says, excuse me, buddy, my God that I believe in is as fictional as that self that is rejecting that God that you have. You understand that how do I explain it? Anytime they tell you yo man, you why do you believe in fiction? You just have to point out that the self is fiction. Okay, like this stuff got out of hand in 2018, and it wasn't responded properly to. Do you know? And I will say it, everybody in 2018, you're lucky I wasn't, it wasn't my time yet to come in front of the global stage. Because the biggest challenge that human beings have, one of the biggest challenges they have, is epistemic entropy, which means disorder in the way that humans can, that it means there's so much disorder in the system of knowledge, okay, that you cannot know anything exactly anymore. Okay, it's equivalent to the bizarreness of how in, like, what is it, like 4 billion years, the Andromeda and Milky Way galaxy are going to like be like two disks that intersect one another. And when that happens, you, all the galaxy clusters around them are going to be pushed away. So those beings 4 billion years from now in the Andromeda Milky Way galaxy are going to think that they're the only beings in existence. They're not going to see the other galaxies. It's bizarre, you know? To truly advance civilization. I'm getting a sense to talk more about like how I feel about like serving humanity. See, guys, it's just about species level identity. I'm sharing something which feels like ahead of its time, but to me, it feels like behind. We're behind. Okay. Um, pretty much to my ego, to my from my perspective, the inner realms we generate the meaning, in the outer realms we find the shapes that we give meaning to. um, when I say species level responsibility, or even earlier I said life is about responsibility levels. If you had an aerial view of a review of a a whole human lifetime from the beginning of their lifetime, it's all about it's about maintaining a coherent sense of self across all the conditions of reality, and the decisions that the human being makes. Species level responsibility happens when you start feeling that the success of your species is more important than you, and it actually is, whether we know it or not. Okay, like I do understand there's pretty much two schools of thought. Okay, and this is based on, I guess, in my view, based on unknownism and knowism. Okay, so in the unknownist school, or you either make the small big or you make the big small. If you make the small big, your inner life, your personal life is enough for you. If you make, or excuse me, if you make the big small, your personal life is enough for you. Your inner life is enough for you. So if this world is very small to you, you have no choice other than to live for yourself, yo. You don't see anything else. But if you suddenly begin to ask yourself, what will humanity look like 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now? How would those advanced humans be living? Will they be living like, yo, man, my personal emotions and ideas are more important than the actuality of what's happening? I I just read the lives of people who actually, some of them were very like lived introverted lives, but their contribution was vast. I guess from another perspective, the system admins moving everyone. So if I envision a advanced civilization by the year, let's say I don't know, how do I say it? You became aware of yourself, so you became responsible for yourself. You became aware of the world, like like your room, your awareness. You became responsible for what's in your awareness. But sometimes in life, we have to travel outside of our kingdom to see what it actually looks like. You need to climb. You need to just go on a road trip outside of yourself to see what yourself was or has been this whole time. For me, I pretty much, I guess this is how my brain processed it. I was like, okay, which one is more like, which one's cooler to do? Which one's like which one feels better? Okay, I just lived for myself and I died for myself. I lived for the future potential of the species and I died for the future potential of the species. The second one is so much more cooler. That means you're not a cool person unless you realize that the most advanced are responsible for their most advanced awareness. There are people who save billions of lives, and there's people who don't know who they are. Like, it's funny. Someone in the chat section says, if I look into the future, I can never tell when it is. I the new age community always almost got me. Do you know what I mean? The here and now community almost got me. You know, I was almost convinced, yeah, bro, energy doesn't have anything to do. I was almost convinced. But then I realized any somebody can be like, yo, man, I'm the most enlightened spiritual person. And they're like, yo, man, do you have body weight? And the person's like, of course. So if you're like, like, I don't know how spiritual physicality can be. Oh, man. What's profound about these talks? I don't know why you guys listen, and I don't know why I give them, but the feeling feels correct. Little do they say, a majority of greatness is like, is this gonna work? They're like, how did you achieve greatness? I just was wondrous about, like, could anything work? Like, you got to see yourself do it. You know what I mean? I don't know. I guess maybe this is, in some souls this is active, but for me, anything that I can't do, and I have to put in my best effort, legit try the best of my ability to see where my ability is. Do you know? It's equivalent to, like, back in the day. Imagine, like, instead of this me giving a lecture, I was like some, I don't know, some swordsman, and I was like telling people, yo, man, you know, my mind was going into a Winland saga arc. A true warrior doesn't need a sword to fight. doesn't need a weapon. The most advanced beings, they realize reality can be stabilized non-physically. This is really how you can tell if someone's intelligent or not. Are they patient or not? I think there has to be some sort of like statistic or some sort of fact about this, that people who are patient make more efficient choices because they process more information before their decision. I don't know. I mean, I have an option to base someone, like when I see someone like physically in front of me as a human being, I have an option to like base them based on my past. They're either based on my past, or either I base their value on their actions in the present, or I base their value based on uh, their contribution in the future. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know. I think eventually, Victor Hugo had this quote where he said, "Nothing is more powerful than an idea in which its time has come." If truly the time has come for humans to advance, it will be obvious. Maybe as obvious as somebody talking about it. All right, guys. So, what did we learn today? We learned that there's many champions in human history. It doesn't matter what sort of, some of them lived public lives, hands-on lives. Some of them lived introverted inner lives, some of them, a majority of them didn't seek fame, and it makes sense because they were solving the problem, not because of what the answer would give them only. They were solving the problem for the species, and those are the most advanced humans. And this is how it starts. You start solving your own problems, then you start solving the problems of your family unit, and then you start solving the problems of your community, then you start solving the problem of your nation, you know and then eventually you realize human species has evolved beyond nationalism, and human beings identify more with the direct human experience rather than a chunk of land that is changing anyways. So it's I don't know how to say this, but to me, um, may the system and admin rekindle every person's true honor. I feel we're missing out on an honor we should be feeling and having for our species. There's a way we should be feeling about our species, 8.1 billion of us, that we're not, you know? And it's because, the answer is not in one, like, imagine like Earth was a video game, was a problem in which this problem was solved, but the answer, part of the answer within them, and they didn't know why they came into existence until it became obvious. Once the puzzle pieces are connected, the full picture is in view, which would mean that in the future there will be advanced, I guess, rhythms of human unity. I don't know how that would happen. For me, deep down, I don't care like what you look like, what you are, what you say, what you do. To me, all human beings are a strategy, okay, to handle their uncertainty, to stabilize their uncertainty. On some level, that's what all human beings are doing. So if you were raised like Christian, and then somebody comes and talks about Islam, or you were raised Muslim and somebody comes and talks about Christianity, you know it's more comfortable, it's more stabilizing for me to just linger and loop in what I'm used to. But a person has to advance and realize that what they are not seeing out of the moment can change the moment's whole meaning. Imagine like somebody texts their someone, and that person doesn't answer, right? And then there's a judgment on that character, but in actuality maybe the person's phone was off, you know or maybe that entity was called to something of a different value in their reality. But anyways, I think it's important that we increase the human responsibilities to a species level based identity and awareness. Those who live for their species, you were greater men than all those men who lived alone, only in front of themselves, only to themselves. You know, that means if you don't advance the world you're in, it doesn't make sense. Everybody wants to improve. There's so many people going to the gym, so many people taking self help courses online and all this, right? You know, there's so many people trying to improve their self. Excuse me, how, like, what's the point of being improved selves in an unimproved world? We have to improve the world as well, you know, which kind of means that maybe I got to go and study governance. I don't know. I don't think I'd be a good I don't think I'd be a good politician. I think I'd be too smart and then I'd have to become evil at some point. When I say too smart, I'm sorry. I don't mean to I not I don't know how nobody knows how smart they are, but when I say too smart, I mean that I can play the Machiavellian game, but if I do, it's going to derank me. It's going to derank my soul. Therefore, I'm going to leave it for those who God has created for those moments. You know. But if I was to redesign civilization, I could. I'm going to make that claim. I've envisioned it. I've legit in my inner realms, behind my eyes, like a film, I've seen glimpses of what function and functional advanced civilization looks like. And you don't believe the comfort and the certainty and the access to information. We human beings are think we're getting overloaded by like what they call it doom scrolling, right? But that's because the context hasn't been made aware of. How do I explain it to you? In the future, they're going to um, they're going to process terabytes of information in seconds, but they're going to do it biologically and naturally somehow. I don't know how to explain. I don't know if nanotechnology is going to become so advanced that it's going to become like similar to biology. I don't know. Like right now, there's discussions that in the next 10 years, they're gonna have like, Ray Kurzweil was talking about this maybe like 10 years, 5 years ago or something about like, maybe like in 5 years there's gonna be, what do you call it? They're gonna regenerate organs. So like if there's something wrong with your heart, they're gonna regenerate a heart from your DNA. If there's something wrong with like if you lost, you know what I mean. We're finding more and more control. And really what has happened in human history is very fascinating. Everything has been in God's domain, and to through the theological lens, God is an all-knowing being. There's nothing new. For the unconditional state of reality. For the condition is new. That means when I when I sit at my computer and play an MMO, for example, ISO or something, ESO, you know, when I create that character, that's I'm a new character in that universe. In the video game's reality, I am limited, to the video game's laws, right? But it doesn't mean my true nature is limited to the video game. So in the same way, when you play a video game and you're not the video game character, and once you finish the quest, you log out. I am telling you, you right now are logged in to the video game of being a human in a three-dimensional reality. Instead of 2 dimensions and pixels, it's three-dimensional and made of the periodic table. But there's a purpose to this video game beyond us, which means it has a game master. And the game master of the video game is superior than the mods. So Islam is saying that the creator of the game of life is beyond the game of life. Nothing in the game of life can equate it. And our task as being as simulated beings is to make our way towards the original reality. You're not in this life to just be a satisfactory simulation, because that has meaning to you if it happens once. But see, to me it's very fascinating. Buddhism sees reincarnation as like looping on the same planet, and through Vedic knowledge, it's kind of bizarre. Like if you believed in a deity, let's say you were a Vishnu worshiper, okay, you worship the god Vishnu, okay, so after you died, Vishnu would like take you to the moon, and you would, in some sense, if you were a righteous person and you did good actions, you would live in that moon, live out your days, live out your paradisal days, on the heavenly days in that moon. You'd live out your heaven credits in that moon, and you would in some sense reincarnate back on earth until you figured out it was a simulation. Because if you treat something that is not real as real, you are not real either. Okay, that means if let's say I've been in a relationship where I've sincerely cared about the other person, you know and then after some point I realize she is seeing someone else. No, excuse me, not that sentence came across hilarious. I meant in the inner realms, she's seeing someone else, she's seeing a version of me that is not me, you know and then I judge that person by their intelligence, and I just leave them always, because on some level, it's if you're around someone for a long time and you don't see what their eyes are looking at, then in some sense you haven't been around them, because people are not where they're standing, they are where they're looking at. You might think like I'm giving the lecture, I forget the number, 2552, I don't know, 53, could be the 54, I think. Maybe this is. But anyways, in my mind, I'm wondering about, after I finish these talks, what am I going to do? And I'm probably going to start inventing stuff. That's where I think, that's what I've realized from reading this today even. You know, inventions and discoveries save billions of lives. How can we invent new stuff and discover new stuff if we're too busy fitting into the old stuff? So take that in, wonder about that, become a champion of the human species. 8.1 billion humans, and we are the original natural biological humans. The unnatural humanity hasn't arisen yet. And that will happen most likely after species unity. Because after, so in my mind, it's like this: unite the species. So you have humankind, mankind, unite mankind. And then you unite earthkind. That means after I've united the species, if I was to be like that kind of archetype, I would in some sense go against eating animals. So if I was to redesign, like let's say if I was a general of humanity, all resources on the planet will go on, in some sense, finding the solution that humans, in some sense, don't need to eat lesser species. We have to awaken them. That means, yes, in 2026, humans are possessed by the limited ideas of themselves, and they're eating other species. And of course, this is for survival. But I am telling you, if God blesses us with the awareness that there's another way reality can happen, then we may have a different answer to the test. There might be more multiple choices, answers, options to the problems of our lives. What I mean is that, see, destiny is such a next level idea, because to the system admin, everything's happened. To me, my future hasn't happened. My past has happened up to this point, and I'm just hanging out in the present. But believing in destiny means I believe that the future has already happened, but I don't know it. The system admin does. So if the future has happened, I've already completed my life. In other words, if there is destiny, then my free will was just a part of the divine will. God is about realizing before the world and humans existed, there was another. Thank you for listening. In the name of God, the most benevolent and the most merciful, most in the name of God, the most merciful and the most benevolent, and one of God's name is Kabir, the great, the greatest, the most advanced being. And the most advanced being is an absolute being, an unconditional being, a being doesn't mistake, that make mistakes, and a more even advanced being is a being that lets others advance. That means this might sound very strange, but this is very human. Like for as a human being, like I gotta see everybody be advanced to know actually how advanced I am in an actually advanced world. Okay, but if we look at, but the system admin's logic may be beyond this. You know, in other words, a world of gods may be a godless world. Therefore, there needs to be a singular god. And this goes back to the infinite regress fallacy, the cosmological argument, you know, Kalam's argument, I believe, or this could, I think I'm accurate here. What it means is that imagine the infinite regress fallacy pretty much means like, yo, man, who caused you? And then who caused your parents? And then who caused them? And who caused them? And who caused them? You're constantly going back to this, that you're an effect of an earlier cause. But when this sort of processing, when we think like this, it doesn't make sense, though. There's a fallacy. The fallacy is that because there is a beginning and end, the beginning can't begin by itself. Or excuse me, I'll say it this way. Um, the first domino that was pushed, that caused all the dominoes to be pushed, okay, was not pushed by a domino. It's as simple as this. In other words, lower or order processes are the effects of higher order causal processes. Of higher order causal processes, yeah. Of causal higher order processes. What does that mean? It means we are the effect. We are legit the tip of the iceberg of an effect of something that its original. How do I explain it? We think the beginning is the beginning. No, the beginning is the secondary beginning. That means if you believe you were born into life, that's not the first beginning. That's the second beginning. The first beginning, after we become conscious of the nature of physical existence, right, can't be physical. That means the artwork is not the artist. It's funny, from one moment we're just being, from another moment, if we do something, lines of meaning arise. It's like action leads to, it's honestly, we're a force. That means Yoda got it wrong, man. Yoda Yoda didn't even understand the Force from Star Wars. And people are gonna be like, no way, some human being actually is questioning Yoda. It's like, yeah, that dude wasn't that honest. You know, like you're telling me you need a cane to walk slow. Do you know what I mean? But you have the Force, you can legit like move the Force, and at the same time, why not throw like hundreds of lightsabers and use the Force to like move 100 lightsabers at the same time? Like nobody can defend against 100 lightsabers attacking them. Do you know what I mean? Unless they have a force field or something, like, or unless they have like 101 lightsabers. I don't know. Yoda looked at Luke and was like, use the Force or something, buddy. We are the force. That's the point. We are that unknown force that moves the life form in ways that we have known. And that's the story of history. In an unknown world, as an unknown being, you have the opportunity to care for the greatest known event on this planet, the advancement of human civilization towards the most advanced power, which is the original system admin. Thank you for listening. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, all praise due to the Lord of the worlds. Truth is beyond the world room, and so Muslims pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Christians pray to God the Father. Muslims cannot believe in God the Son because we cannot make the simulation equal to truth. So, in other words, my life is a lie in the truth that was beyond my life. But it's not a lie to us. To us, it's our life. But to the higher power, are we different than, ideas that came and went? And if God, to me, you know what it is? Like this, like, okay, this is not my this is not my view, but this is a view that it can be seen as, okay? That and first of all, God should not be humanized. Okay, so any person who like right now, I'm going to use a humanized example for God, but I'm telling you, God is beyond human in the from the Islamic view, and also from the view that truth is beyond form. So think of it this way. You know how you wake up and in the morning and you have thoughts, or let's say you have ideas. We call them that, but I call them inner events. You have inner events take place. So let's say you're like sitting having your coffee and the thought comes like, yo, what am I going to do next week? Yo, what am I going to do like 100 years from now? If I become immortal, what am I going to do? Like, you know what I mean? Your mind thinks on ideas. So what it is think of your brain as an antenna, and you pick up signals throughout the day, and the signals you act on become your life. Okay. Now I want you to imagine in the same way, okay, God is the awareness of the world, is the awareness to the world, and we human beings are like thoughts of this higher being, and our divine destiny or expression is if this being acts on these thoughts. Okay. Again, God can be humanized, guys. I'm not promoting shirk. I'm just explaining design, existential design, the positions. And I'm saying that just like how a human being has ideas they act on throughout the day, and those ideas actualize and manifest, sometimes I feel destiny is like, I don't know how to say it, like, this is very complex because I do want to explain reality. I'm limited to explaining reality out of my own human nature, but the divine nature surpasses human awareness, the human limits. But I will say it this way: like it's like my existence as a human being on Earth is like I'm an idea in the mind of a higher, in the mind of the world, and the soul of the world can act in accordance to the idea. So think of it this way: the meaning of life is happening in the inner realms, which is a subjective overlay. The inner realms is simulated. The outer realms, which is existential, it's like I'm trying to tell you that it's like an existential field and an experiential field are interacting. The mind is required for their interaction. The mind is like the dialogue between um, the attributeless soul and the attributeful body, attributed body, you know, the body with attributes. So, in other words, I'll give you an example. Let's say I think of, okay, a thought occurred to me. Write hi in the chat section. So I'm going to write the word hi. Okay. See, I acted on that. Before that, the line of thought, the line of code, the inner realm event found itself in my inner realms. I chose to have my attention linger on it. And anything your attention is on too long, you become an active agent. Do you know? And so I guess now I understand that maybe I should have created roles for people to join this Mr. Within project. Maybe that's the problem. Do you know? The escapist alternative out of the inner realms. I need to create a system. So in other words, I need to the if I want to create an advanced headquarters for the most advanced beings on planet Earth, if I don't act on that, it doesn't manifest. If it doesn't manifest, it doesn't lead to the next idea. In other words, if I don't physically act, I cannot see the evolution of the ideas that I'm acting under. Man, the work's beginning. Anyways, guys, thank you for listening. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most advanced, the most merciful, and excuse me, in the name of God, the most merciful and the most benevolent, we are in the presence of the advanced possibility of life, and I don't see a reason why we should ignore it. You know, live for the greatness of everyone, and you have lived for the greatness of everything you have served. Win-win. The ego wins because it serves its greater self. The greater self wins because it remembers itself. Thank you.